Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little morbid and a little creepy, and honestly, I was really scared and didn't know what to think. This had never happened to anybody that I know that had the gastric stimulator, and I had no idea. This surgery was not even FDA approved and still is not FDA approved in the United States. So as you see by the title, you might think, Alana, you're being so dramatic. And typically without medical stuff, I am. But this story is actually 100% true. It's actually kind of hard for me to tell. It happened about a year ago, but it was the most frightening thing that's ever happened in my life. And just as a quick reminder, I'm only 22, and the amount of surgeries and things that I've gone through, I never thought for a day I would ever go through this. I was afraid of needles, and now I have to have a needle poked in my chest every single week. So I've made a lot of progress. To begin, the gastric stimulator is a little metal machine that goes right on the outside of your skin. It's on my stomach, and I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like on my body. This is what it looks like. This is the scar, all that I have left. But it's crazy to think this little scar sent me to the ICU, and it looks really gross. And the gastric stimulator is supposed to send electrical impulses to my stomach to signal my brain and my stomach to move the food through faster. Unfortunately, that's opposite of what it did. I almost died from it. And it was the most petrifying thing of my life. So this is how the story starts. It was September 28th, 2018, and I had to go travel about 2 hours to Gainesville because I currently live in Jacksonville, Florida. So with surgeries, you have to get there about an hour or 2 hours earlier than your actual procedure time. With that being said, I was all excited to go to my surgery and get this thing implanted because it took months, and I mean months, of paperwork and fighting with insurance and doctors to get them to send referrals back and forth. It's very frustrating. I got up super early, and if I can recall, I think it was 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning that we had to leave the house. So as we're driving, we're talking about it and thinking of the different possibilities of what my doctor told me. So this procedure is supposed to help with my nausea and help me gain my hunger sense back. And I was thinking, okay, so my first meal, what is it gonna be? Am I gonna have sushi? Am I gonna have McDonald's? And I was contemplating which meal I wanted first. Little did I know that the day I come home from this, I will be back in the hospital a day after. I get to the surgery and they are prepping me. Everything's going great. They can't get an IV in me for the life of me. It took them about like 3 or 4 tries. And for me, that's pretty typical. I have really small veins. They had me sign some papers just saying that all this liability stuff that doctors have to say, make sure that I'm gonna be okay with the surgery, and I was off into the surgery room. As I woke up from surgery, I was in immense pain, and the doctor said it was gonna be one of the easiest surgeries I'll go through. The nurses kept telling me it will be fine, and I was kind of confused why I was in so much pain and just felt so bloated and disgusting. So I was sent home the same day, which actually was probably not the best option considering I live about 2 to 3 hours away, and if I needed anything, my doctor is not just a phone call away. He takes weeks to get back to me, so it was pretty nerve-wracking. Woke up the next morning and needing pain medicine, and unfortunately my doctor only gave me about a 2-day supply, which is fine. I usually don't take a lot of pain medications for any surgeries, but this one, I really needed it. And on October 1st, that next week, I woke up in immense pain. I was having a fever of 103 that wasn't breaking with Tylenol, and I called the on-call nurse and she said sepsis. So I went to my primary care doctor, had to drive 2 to 3 hours with traffic all the way back to Gainesville. And I was just going there to get some more pain medication because I had been out. So as I went there, they took my temperature, they looked at my incision and said, you have to go to the hospital right now. Like, we're gonna call you an ambulance. And I said, oh my gosh, like, no, I'm fine. It was a 5-minute drive, so one of my friends drove me. And as soon as I hit those doors, they had nurses and doctors coming to me, pushing me back into the trauma unit of the ICU. There, they hooked me up to a bunch of machines, but it was so scary. So they had an IV team on both arms. They had about 2 or 3 IVs into my arms already. They were injecting all of these antibiotics. They weren't able to get my fever down, so it was running still 103, 104. So they were freaking out. And And I know this is probably really gross, like trigger warning, but let's just say I had things coming out my mouth and the other end non-stop. So they didn't even know what was going on, what to do. My blood work was coming back horrendous, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was so out of it. I was on pain medication, on antibiotics. I was having allergic reactions to those. It was a disaster. And the only thing running back to my mind was, kind of funny, 2 days ago, I was contemplating and hoping just to have a cheeseburger for the first time in over a year. Meanwhile, I was dying on the medical table. So what I mean by that, my liver was failing. There were so many other organs that were going blank. Like, none of the blood work was coming back showing what was going on. All over my gastric pacemaker that wasn't FDA approved, I kept thinking my mind was racing, and all I wanted to do was to get this procedure to help me to eat. If you really think about how pathetic that is, like, it really is. It's kind of sad. As I'm laying there, I'm blacking in and out of consciousness. My fiance is crying on the side. I felt so bad for her. She's calling friends and family to kind of get advice. And all of a sudden they told me after a few hours, well, we don't really know what's wrong with you, but you're gonna go to the ICU for the night. I'm looking at her, looking at the nurses, looking at the doctors, thinking,
get this pacemaker out of me.
And on top of everything else, this pacemaker is shocking me. And if you've never been shocked by like an electrical outlet, that's what it feels like in my stomach. And that still happens to this day. I had to go up to the ICU. They had no idea what was wrong with me. They're testing me for C. diff, which is a type of bacteria that can go into your intestines and comes back a day later and it wasn't C. diff. So they said, well, since you aren't in critical care anymore, and we can't figure out what's wrong with you, we're gonna send you to a GI floor since your doctors can go ahead and visit you. I'm on the GI floor, and my doctors came by, and they said that that wasn't normal, that my pacemaker was shocking me. He's the only person in Florida that I am aware of that has this little remote that is big as my pacemaker that goes over the top of it that he can shut it off. So, I was still having projectile vomiting and also other things happening, and the doctors had to test it every single day. It was really gross and disgusting, but they still couldn't figure out what was going on. At that point, I wasn't still able to eat orally, so I was still on my feeding tube. So, as I said before, everything was coming out, so I wasn't able to keep any nutrients in. My body was so weak that I looked like my grandpa. I literally had to use a walker to walk around. I was 21 at the time. I had just had my birthday, and a few months after of me turning 21, I was on a walker. And I was very insecure for a very long time. So they did order for me to go ahead and get it replaced. And at that point, I was like, dude, I just went through all of this. I was in the ICU yesterday, and you're having me stay here for the rest of the week, and you can't figure out what's wrong with me. I'm not able to eat. I'm walking on a walker. I felt like my life was over. All because I wanted to enjoy some McDonald's, okay? They should sponsor me, by the way. I was just so motivated to eat food. I wanted a hamburger or a McDouble, and I literally got this one surgery for that. It's pretty pathetic as you think about it. Finally, after a few days, as the week progressed, my fever finally went down. They weren't able to find anything different in my blood work besides my liver, so they were trying to give me medication for that. They wanted to send me home because the risk of infection in hospitals are way higher than being at home. So I got home and I got the phone call that my doctor wanted to replace the battery out of my pacemaker. I got the battery replaced. It was pretty rough. It was pretty painful, but today, that's what I'm working on, and it still shocks me a little bit, but definitely not enough to send me to the ICU. As a conclusion, should you get the gastric pacemaker? I think you should, and I say that just because medicine is amazing, and it is worth the risk. I would say, would I do this all over again? Probably not, but that was one of the most scary times of my life, but I had a lot of support from my mother-in-law, my fiance, my grandpa, and a couple of my friends. It was very, very nice to have support with something that was so scary and traumatic. And the point of this video wasn't to dissuade anyone from getting this pacemaker, but it is to bring awareness to people my age and people who are older who possibly might have to get this procedure done. There isn't a lot of content on it. There isn't a lot of research on this material. of what the pacemaker does and how it affects people. Hope that this video kind of brought some light to different situations that people have to go through with gastroparesis. So that was the time that I almost died from a surgery. It was pretty nuts. I still to this day have no idea what happened to me. They think it just was my body reacting wrong to the gastric stimulator. I still don't know why I had a fever, why my liver was failing, why my organs were shutting down, but hey, I'm still here, so it's great. If you like this video, you can go ahead and give that a thumbs up and also subscribe right down there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to bring you guys more content this week, maybe possibly a vlog, a day in my life, or some medical organization. If you guys have any ideas, you can go ahead and put them down in the comments below. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you next week.